What's good, YouTube? Sensational Sincere is here, and I'm back with another Tom Clancy's The Division Vendor Reset video. We're here for May 22nd, 2020's Vendor Reset. So let's get right into this to see what we got good for this week. Okay, so for our first gear items, you're going to head over to Camp Hudson. Here, the gear vendor has a Spec Ops pack with the Talon Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 275. The armor is 1,278. This roll for firearms, 1,232. And the attributes this has is crit damage and bleed resistance. And then also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4% ballistic shield damage. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to the meat locker. Here the weapons vendor has a rugged mini reflex sight with 7% crit hit chance, 2% accuracy, and 2.50% stability. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to the base operations. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a tactical M249 Para with a gear score of 265. It has 22% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is adept, commanding, and competent. Also here we got some operator gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 265. The armor is 897. This roll for firearms 1,150. And the attributes this has is marksman's rifle damage, crit hit damage, and health on kill. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the gear vendor here, and we got some operator gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 266. The armor is 904. This roll for stamina 1,157. And the attributes this has is enemy armor damage, shotgun damage, and pistol damage. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the advanced weaponry vendor, and here we got a tactical SASG 12K with a gear score of 266. It has 308% stagger, and the talents this has is destructive, capable, and deadly. Also here we got an M249B with a gear score of 266. It has 21% damage to targets out of cover, and the talents this has is competent, vicious, and dominant. Also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 4.50% reload speed, 3% crit hit chance, and 9.70% rate of fire. Also here we got a 5.52 hollow sight with 7% crit hit chance, 2% accuracy, and 4% crit hit damage. For our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special equipment vendor, and here we got a Liberator with a gear score of 267. It has 18% enemy armor damage. And the talents this has is competent, capable, and brutal. Also here we got a Pecan. If you like to run this weapon, it has a gear score of 270. It has 22% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents this has is meticulous, competent, and Pecan. Also here we got an ACR with a gear score of 273. It has 19% enemy armor damage. And the talents this has is capable, ferocious, and focused. Also here we got a Marine Super 90 with a gear score of 283. It has 330.50% stagger. And the talents this has is trained, destructive, and brutal. Also here we got a Spec Ops mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 939. This roll for stamina 1,233. And the attributes this has is crit chance and disoriented resistance. Also here we got some Spec Ops gloves with the talent Savaged on there. They have a gear score of 269. The armor is 906. This roll for stamina 1,254. And the attributes this has is marksman's rifle damage, health on kill, and crit hit damage. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 5.50% sticky bomb explosion radius. Also here we got an extended magazine with 120.50% magazine size, 3% crit hit chance, and 4% reload speed. And for our next gear items, we're still at the base operations. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a classic RPK 74 blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a holster blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a firearms glove blueprint with a gear score of 256. Also here we got a high velocity magazine blueprint with the power level 34. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the cavern. Here the gear vendor has a prototype firearms mod with 213 firearms and 4% damage to elites. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Camp Clinton. Here the special equipment vendor has an Historian with a gear score of 277. It has 164% headshot damage, and the talents it has is cool-headed, destructive, and Historian repeats. Also here we got a Liberator with a gear score of 271. It has 18% enemy armor damage, and the talents it has is deadly, ferocious, and meticulous. Also here we got a Cassidy with a gear score of 264. It has 331% stagger, and the talents it has is destructive, brutal, and boomstick. Also here we got a Military Scar H with a gear score of 262. It has 144% headshot damage, and the talents it has is dominant, ferocious, and unforgiving. Also here we got a Spec Ops mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 275. The armor is 980. This roll for stamina 1,128, and the attributes this has is all resistance and blind death resistance. Also here we got a Spec Ops armor with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 276. The armor is 1,897. Its roll for electronics 1,254. And the attributes it has is skill haste, enemy armor damage, and ammo capacity. Also here we got a prototype electronics mod with 252 electronics and 2.50% exotic damage resilience. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4% ballistic shield damage resilience. For our next gear items, we're still at Camp Clinton. Head over to the special blueprints vendor, and here we got a classic M44 carbon blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got a firearms gloves blueprint with a gear score of 256. We also got electronics knee pad blueprint with a gear score of 256. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Autumn's Hope. Here the gear vendor has an operator mask with the talent enduring on there. It has a gear score of 268. The armor is 893. Its roll for electronics 1119. And the attributes this has is all resistance and burn resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to Madison's stand. Here the gear vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 276. The armor is 948. Its roll for firearms 1,230. And the attributes this has is skill power and burn resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the ward. Here the gear vendor has a tactical pack with the talent relentless on there. It has a gear score of 272. The armor is 1,195. Its roll for stamina 1,242. And the attributes this has is health and bleed resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to the firewall. Here the gear vendor has a Spec Ops armor with the talent rapid on there. It has a gear score of 276. The armor is 1,877. Its roll for stamina 1,224. And the attributes this has is skill haste, all resistance, and increased kill XP. Also here we got a prototype firearms mod with 213 firearms and 3% damage to elites. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 7.50% Seeker Mine explosion radius. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Black Market RPK 74E with a gear score of 269. It has 18% damage to targets out of cover. And the talents this has is Swift, Brutal, and Unforgiven. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 39th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a Police UMP 45. If you like to run this weapon, it has a gear score of 262. It has 21% crit hit chance. And the talents this has is Unforgiven, Competent, and Ambusher. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 46th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 262. The armor is 883. Its roll for electronics 1,117. And the attributes this has is skill power and blind death resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to West 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical vest with the talent rapid on there. It has a gear score of 275. The armor is 1,976. Its roll for electronics 1,189. And the attributes this has is exotic damage resilience, enemy armor damage, and increased kill XP. And then also here we got a Tyrant suppressor with 7.50% crit hit chance, 2.50% stability, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 64th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone gear mod vendor has a prototype performance mod with 4% sticky bomb damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 61st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has an extended magazine with 113% magazine size, 3% crit hit chance, and 4% crit hit damage. Also here we got a large suppressor FDE with 18% crit hit damage, 3% crit hit chance, and 6% headshot damage. And then also here we got a small red grip with 18% crit hit damage, 5% reload speed, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 58th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 264. The armor is 1,149. Its roll for electronics 1,177. And the attributes this has is crit damage and bleed resistance. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 53rd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical AUG A3P with a gear score of 262. It has 19.50% crit hit chance. And the talents this has is Brutal, Destructive, and Adept. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 46th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a classic M44 carbon with a gear score of 274. It has 160% headshot damage. And the talents this has is Brutal, Dominant, and Ferocious. And also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4% turret damage. For our next gear items, you want to head over to East 42nd Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype electronics mod with 247 electronics and 1% crit hit chance. And then also here we got a large suppressor FDE with 19% crit hit damage, 4.50% optimal range, and 2% accuracy. For our next gear items, you want to head to East 40th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a tactical M249 power with a gear score of 272. It has 22% damage to targets out of cover. And the talent list has a skilled, fierce, and destructive. Also here we got a prototype performance mod with 4.50% support station healing speed. And then also here we got a heavy magazine spring with 3% crit hit chance, 4.50% reload speed, and 10% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 34th Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a prototype firearms mod with 255 firearms and 1% crit hit chance. And then also here we got a Mega Rifle Suppressor 10 with 18% headshot damage, 4% crit hit damage, and 5% optimal range. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to East 31st Street checkpoint. Here the Dark Zone vendor has a classic M60 with a gear score of 264. It has 19% damage to targets out of cover. And the talent list has is ferocious, self-preserved, and deadly. And also here we got an extended magazine with 121% magazine size, 4% crit hit damage, and 5.30% rate of fire. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ2 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has an operator mask with the talent Tenacious on there. It has a gear score of 276. The armor is 1000. Its roll for stamina 1131. And the attributes it has is all resistance and blind death resistance. Also here we got Spec Ops armor with the talent Reckless on there. It has a gear score of 265. The armor is 1728. Its roll for electronics 1201. And the attributes it has is health on kill, health, and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ3 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone weapons vendor has a SOCOM Scar L with a gear score of 278. It has 20% enemy armor damage. And the talents it has is prepared, vicious, and talented. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ4 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone gear mod vendor has a prototype stamina mod with 259 stamina and 1% crit hit chance. And then also here we got a prototype performance mod with 6.50% support station duration. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ8 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone gear vendor has a Spec Ops mask with the talent refreshed on there. It has a gear score of 269. The armor is 858. Its roll for electronics 1264. And the attributes it has is enemy armor damage and burn resistance. And also here we got a Gunslinger vest with the talent Rapid on there. It has a gear score of 271. The armor is 1893. Its roll for firearms 1198. And the attributes it has is health, health on kill, and ammo capacity. And also here we got an operator pack with the talent Relentless on there. It has a gear score of 272. The armor is 1205. Its roll for firearms 1196. And the attributes it has is stability and ammo capacity. For our next gear items, you're going to head over to DZ9 Safe Room. Here the Dark Zone weapon mod vendor has a 5.52 hollow sight with 7.50% crit hit chance, 4.50% optimal range, and 5.50% headshot damage. Alright everybody, that's it for our Tom Clancy's The Division vendor reset video for May 22nd, 2020's vendor reset. I hope everybody who tuned into it found them something that they needed. Smash out on that like button if you hadn't. Smash out on that sub button if you hadn't too. I appreciate that support. Check me out on Twitch. I stream there sometimes. Mixer sometimes too. I got a Twitter and a Instagram. Y'all can check me out on there too if y'all want to. And I will holler at y'all with the next one, everybody. Take care. Peace.